What's it like to ride to work on an e-bike? Who do you picture when you think of a bike commuter?
As a middle-aged mom who lives in a city not known for its bikeability, I probably don't embody what you think of as a bike commuter. But I am an e-bike commuter, and I have been for almost 5 years. In this video, I'm going to tell you all of the benefits that I've found of e-bike commuting in the past 5 years, related to money, health, the environment, and more, in the hopes that you might consider it for yourself as well. Plus, I'll tell you about the practical equipment I use, what my commute is like, and some of the challenges that I've had. I'm Susie, I'm American, and I've been living in Dijon, a small city in France, for over 15 years. On this channel, I talk about money, investing, and life in France, and I think you'll see that this subject has a lot of overlap with both money and living in France. I started biking to work about 5 years ago, not just because I hate driving and being stuck in traffic, but also because I realized that using an e-bike was just better than any other form of transportation, really. Let's talk about the benefits of e-bike commuting. E-biking around my small city is simply the fastest way for me to get around. I can get places faster with less effort and park closer to my final destination than with a car, or walking, or even taking public transportation. I often have to go to several places around the city in the same day, dressed professionally and with all of my work material. Sometimes on my commute home, I race the tram and I win. It's so satisfying. And oftentimes, I zoom past a line of cars waiting at an intersection, which is also great. I save money for sure. I saw an article on Forbes that said that bike commuters save on average $2,500 a year. I saw an example of a recent video that was a French bike commuter who claimed to have saved 13,000 euros. I guess bike commuters who get rid of their cars really are able to save a lot of money. I still have a car, a little paid off, cheap car. My car does require insurance and some maintenance and gas, and it's true that I hardly ever use it, but we keep it just in case. If I were to get rid of my car, then we would really be able to save more money. How much have I saved personally by using my e-bike? Well, if I had to do the calculation, I would calculate based on using my car or taking public transportation to work, because walking is just a bit too far and I have all this stuff that I need to lug around with me. My bike has almost 6,000 kilometers on it, most of which I've put on it commuting. There's a calculation that French employers use to reimburse employees who use their cars for work, which is supposed to take into account the costs associated with driving, not just the cost of fuel, but insurance, wear and tear. The lowest amount is about 38 centimes per kilometer. So if we assume that I've commuted 4,000 kilometers at 38 cents per kilometer, that's 1,520 euros. Gas is so expensive here in France. Today we filled up and it was over €1.85 per liter, which is over $7 a gallon. And when you take into consideration our relatively low salaries, you can see how expensive it is. Granted, we really fill up rarely. The last time that we filled up was back in April. Plus, by riding my e-bike, I save on not buying bus or tram tickets. I'll talk more later about how much the bike actually cost, but I think it's safe to say that it has definitely paid for itself. And I just love riding my bike. It's good for my physical and mental health. When I'm riding, I'm outside, getting moderate exercise, not cramped in public transportation or stuck in traffic in my car. A 2017 study found that e-bikes provide moderate exercise on flat and downhill segments and vigorous exercise on uphill segments of a ride. Even though riding an e-bike requires less effort than riding a regular bike, because it's so pleasant, people who have e-bikes wind up riding them more frequently, meaning that we get more frequent regular exercise. Plus, I also read in Forbes that 51% of e-bike commuters also claim to feel lower levels of stress.
In terms of environmental benefits, obviously if I'm not driving, I'm not consuming any gasoline. I'm not contributing to global warming, and I'm not emitting any greenhouse gases into the environment. Yes, there is the problem of the lithium battery, but 140 e-bike batteries are the equivalent to one Tesla battery. And I can charge the battery at off-peak hours. My e-bike is silent and doesn't contribute to noise pollution. Getting a car off the road means there's less congestion in my already traffic-clogged city, and leaving my place in public transportation means there's more space on the tram for someone else. My e-bike is light and doesn't cause road damage. I could go on and on. And the fact that I specifically have an e-bike provides some additional benefits as well. I'm never sweaty when I arrive for work, and I can ride my e-bike in my teaching clothes and transport all of my teaching equipment. And it's just fun. How many people dread their commute? Not me. Can you imagine?
So here's the equipment that I have for e-bike commuting, which makes it not just painless, but I would say even fun. This is my bike, which we bought for about 1,200 euros back in 2019. We bought it new, which is a bit uncommon for us. Oftentimes we try to buy things secondhand, but back in 2019, there wasn't much of a market yet for secondhand e-bikes. There weren't any government subsidies available for people who wanted to buy new e-bikes, but if you are interested in buying an e-bike in France in 2024, you should definitely look into it because there are several government programs which will help certain people to buy e-bikes. My bike is a Fisher, and I found the newer version of my bike online here. I don't really know anything about the technical aspects. It just works all the time. It's extremely reliable. Here's the dashboard, which displays information about speed, battery, and how many kilometers I've ridden. These are the two buttons to control the speed or the power of the motor, and then I press these two buttons at the same time to turn the light on. There has been some wear and tear on the bike. I think it's from when I lock the bike up to the bike rack. These are new tires that I got last year. They cost about 70 euros, and the brakes were changed recently as well for about 20 euros. The battery is starting to show signs of age, meaning that the power sort of starts to dwindle after fewer kilometers than in the past, but it's still fine for the moment. And charging it has never made a difference in our electricity bill. I think the cost to charge it is negligible. And for the record, it's never died on me completely when I was out and about. And if it did, it wouldn't be a problem anyway. I would just pedal normally. The bike is quite heavy, but I can still pedal even when the motor is turned off. And I have this heavy-duty lock that I use to lock up my bike whenever I'm out and about with it. And I think it's important to invest in a good lock because it does bring some peace of mind. I know that at first, when my bike was new, I was really worried about it getting stolen. And I had to kind of come to grips with that idea because I realized that if I was too worried about it getting stolen, then I wasn't going to use it as much. So now that the bike is 5 years old, the chances of it getting stolen are probably a bit lower. And I have my lock anyway to protect it. Investing in this 45 euro poncho was an absolute game changer. Before I had this cheap little plastic trash bag-esque poncho that I would wear when it was raining in the winter on top of my winter coat. And then I bought this and it improved my bike commuting experience considerably. So now I stay dry and I'm visible. It has this reflexive band as well. My husband tells me that I look like a human traffic cone, but I don't care. I have no shame. I'm happy to be wearing my poncho. I'm happy to stay warm and dry in the winter and when it rains. If your arguments against bike commuting are that it's cold, dark, and wet in the winter, a poncho like this can transform you from an occasional bike commuter to a regular bike commuter. Plus, I also always wear a helmet. Plus, if you ever wear long skirts or dresses to work, it's great to have a hair elastic on hand, and that way you can attach your skirt in between your legs so that your skirt doesn't get stuck in the bike wheels and it stays clean. And my last essential accessory is this crate, because when I'm biking to work, I usually have my purse, my computer, and my lunch. So it's essential for me to have a way to be able to transport these things.
What's my commute like? It depends where I'm working, but usually it's about 3 kilometers or less than 2 miles, and it takes me about 15 minutes. I never get stuck in traffic. I always get a little fresh air. And the best parts are when I can ride on a dedicated bike lane because I feel safest and there's no interaction with car traffic. What are the challenges associated with e-bike commuting? The way I see it, there are 2 big challenges in convincing more people to try e-bike commuting. Bike infrastructure and people's mindsets need to change. If we can overcome these, more people will commute by bike, I'm sure. Take my city, for example. I imagine it's somewhat representative of other small cities around Europe and maybe in other parts of the world. The bike infrastructure here is relatively good, but there are some places where it's woefully inadequate, and I'm going to show you a few ridiculous examples. City officials in Dijon say that they're trying to promote bike use, but we still have a long way to go, even just to get up to the level of other more bike-friendly French cities. So in France, Strasbourg is the city that apparently is the most bike-friendly, where 16% of the population uses a bike to commute to work. But again, this is still on a different level than those internationally renowned cities like Amsterdam and Copenhagen. And I've had the chance to bike in both of those cities. And here I am, for example, in Copenhagen in 2018, and here's a photo of my husband and my son biking in Amsterdam in 2016. In those cities, it's just really pleasant and you feel completely safe, and the bike infrastructure is just incredible. And in Dijon, we are still nowhere near those levels. Apparently, according to the official statistics, 3% of all trips in Dijon happen on a bike. I don't know, that seems a bit generous to me, but anecdotally, I did just see this headline in the local newspaper profiling people who had decided to give up their car in favor of their bicycle. So I guess we can interpret that as a sign of progress. Here's a map of our city's bike lanes. They are the dark lines on the map, and you can see it's quite inconsistent. This is Place d'Arcy, one of the main squares in our city, and when I arrive here on my bike, as I often do, I literally have no idea what I'm supposed to do because the bike path just disappears in the midst of all this activity. Look at this bike path. It's absolutely horrible. It's on Rue de Grès. They just painted a bike path onto old parking spots, and then there's this concrete waste that's hardened in the bike path at some point and just makes the whole thing bumpy and unsafe and unpleasant. And there's some completely incomprehensible infrastructure, like this bike light that's not remotely accessible. I literally have to get off my bike to push this big button versus this entirely accessible big button I photographed on a trip to Amsterdam in 2016 because I thought it was so cool. I have had one accident. When I was commuting home on my bike last May, I was hit by a car, and don't worry, I'm fine. I was a bit shaken up, but I wasn't hurt. The accident happened at such a slow speed anyway that I don't think it could have really caused any damage. But looking back on it now, I think I blame more the poor or confusing bike infrastructure in the city and drivers' sort of general lack of awareness about bikers more than I actually blame the person who hit me. It happened at an intersection where there was a pedestrian crosswalk, and then right next to that there were those spray painted symbols of a bike on the road. And as I approached the intersection, there was a driver that was arriving at the same time, and the driver slowed down to the point where I thought they were indicating to me that they were letting me go, that they were letting me cross the street. So I crossed the street, and at that moment they accelerated and then they hit me. And at that point the driver said that they didn't even see me, that they hadn't seen me at all, which was strange because it was in broad daylight. But again, it's just tricky. It's tricky for the drivers navigating in the urban environment, and it's tricky for bikers as well. And I'm fine, but it's unfortunate that that had to happen. And I've had several other near misses with cars as well. Another challenge is when the bike paths are wet, they get really slippery, especially in the fall when the leaves have fallen. That can be tricky. And I have fallen off of my bike as well a couple times. It hasn't happened for a while now because I think I'm better at sort of managing the weight because the bike itself is quite heavy. Plus, when I have all of my stuff in the crate, the center of balance can be a little bit off. And so when I was first, getting used to riding my bike all the time, sometimes I would take a curve quickly or something would happen that would sort of throw me off balance and I would fall. But I've learned how to manage that better in the past couple years. So am I crazy for commuting by bike? Am I taking too many risks by making this choice every day? Well, I truly don't think so because on paper, our city is really perfect for bike commuting. It's so small and so compact. Everyone who lives in the city should be able to get around by bike. And the beauty of an e-bike is that even the people who live on the outskirts of the city or who live in the nearby suburbs should also be able to commute by bike into the city center. Because of the assistance of the motor, those distances become more manageable for people on bicycles as well. Unfortunately, the infrastructure just isn't in place yet to make that a reality, but hopefully my city will continue to improve the bike infrastructure, which will encourage more and more people to commute by bike as well. In addition to the infrastructure improvements that need to happen, there are also two major mindset shifts that need to happen. One, people need to want to bike more, and two, drivers need to be more attentive to the bikers in their environment. I have tried to convince people in my entourage to give e-bike commuting a try, but they seem to have a variety of different excuses. They're generally supportive of me and my efforts, but for whatever reason, they don't feel like they can try themselves. And I understand. Starting is really hard in particular, especially when you're used to the convenience and the comfort of driving to work every day. Personally, I had to force myself to go through a sort of mindset shift, and I had to sort of assume the identity of an e-bike commuter. And this helps when it's a cold or a rainy day, and in the back of my mind, I have a little hesitation like, oh, it would just be nicer and easier to drive. And then I tell myself, no, you are an e-bike commuter. You're going to ride your bike. And it's great because then I get on my bike and I get some fresh air, and even if it's cold and rainy, I'm satisfied when I get to work and I'm energized and invigorated. And so I'm happy not to have taken the car every time I get to work. And I have gotten a number of snide remarks about how I'm cheating because I use an e-bike. And I think at first I would try to justify myself, but I just don't pay attention to those comments anymore. And the mentality of drivers is still really rough here. I definitely sense their aggressiveness sometimes when I have no choice but to share the road with them. And I really don't know what the solution to that is, aside from separating bikes from car traffic more and more, if that's possible. I hope that my city will continue to make improvements in bike infrastructure in that way. I even started collecting photos of cars parked in the bike lane. It happens so frequently, it's hard to attribute it to anything other than a lack of thoughtfulness or respect. Of course, I should mention that I recognize I'm very lucky to have the physical ability to ride a bicycle. I know that that's not the case for everybody, and I have noticed around my city that people are using some other types of battery-powered mobility solutions. For example, I've seen several of these electric trikes, which I think is great because maybe these people, they still want the benefits of the exercise they're getting from actually doing the pedaling, but they feel like they need a little bit more stability, so they have that third wheel that provides that for them. And then, of course, there are lots of mobility chairs as well, battery powered, that I see people using on the bike paths. So these are great solutions to help people maintain their independence in getting around, even if they are not able to ride a two-wheeled bicycle. There have been a handful of times in the past few years where I felt like I had to drive to work, and every time that's happened, I've felt guilty for wasting precious resources, stressed about being stuck in traffic, and annoyed that I feel like I'm wasting my time. E-bike commuting for me, it's that perfect trifecta of being good for the planet, good for my wallet, and good for my health. So what about you? Is this something that you have tried or that you would consider? And what's holding you back if you haven't started? Let me know in the comments below. Also, let me know if there's anything I left out when talking about e-bike commuting, some other advantages or other challenges that you've encountered. You can check out these other videos about ways to save money and subscribe if you're interested in learning more about my life in France. Thanks so much for watching today, and à bientôt!